Hello, I'm Mark Baer. I'm with Paul Ventura. You're watching the YourTown television show, and welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, let's start here. This is Randy Tennell's new book, Carmel and Big Sur Painters, and here is Paul Ventura in his life as a painter. Oh, this camera over here. But we're not going to talk about painting today. So
Good.
Everybody has his life in beautiful Carmel by the sea.
Especially on days like this.
Pebble Beach.
Unbelievable.
But we also have our Hollywood lives. And today we're going to talk about our Hollywood lives. So Paul Ventura, casting director, longtime casting director. First of all, let's just talk about the casting process, what it is, the art of casting. You know, because people just think you pick people and you look at your Rolodex and you look at a bunch of faces and that's how it happens. Casting's an art form.
And there are certain tricks of the trade. I was thinking about this earlier. You know, when I first started out, I was working with somebody who was at Paramount, and she had the theory, as a casting director, to bring in the best person that she wanted for the part last. So you build to it. So they see and they go, oh, that's good. Let's see who else. Oh, my God. And it just has a progression. However, there was a guy, an executive at Paramount, who kind of superseded anybody else's opinion, whether it's the director or whoever. And there were some famous directors at Paramount at the time. This is for TV. And they couldn't get approval unless this executive said, that's who I want. So he laughed hysterically at the first actor that came in. That was okay. And then the second actor would come in doing the same scene, and the executive kind of smiled. By the third and fourth, he was like just sitting there like a lump. Going, and then he got really angry by the fifth person. Like, why are they telling me the same joke? I saw the scene already. It's not funny anymore. Well, that's unique. And so he only approved the weaker actor at the beginning. And I learned a lot from that. So I would tailor it, and I'd always bring my, favorite first. Let them sit back and go, oh, my God, we've got this. Anyone else is just like icing on the cake. Until a feature director, as I had everything all scheduled for the callback, said, in all my years of directing, I've always understood that the last person I see always gets the part. And I go, I'm screwed. So you never know, but at least if you can figure it out. And one of the things, whether you're a casting director or an actor in an audition, if possible, is to know who the most powerful person in the room is, who has the power to say yes. And a lot of times you'll hear, sometimes directors will throw things at you, especially commercially, just to see if you take direction well. It may be the wrong choice, but he wants to see if you're listening because they want to work with you. Also, a casting director has to make a few evaluations. What if that person gets the job? How are they going to be on the set? Because a lot of people cost a lot of money by taking too much time, and then you won't be hired again. So there's a lot of things that come into play.
So it's an eye to be a casting director. It's something I never really thought about, until I knew you and kind of broke it down. But I want to talk about how you inherited the eye from your dad. Let's not spend too much time with this, but just tell me this story.
My dad was a rocket engineer, so he's dealing with, both the minuscule and the fantastic. But my parents and I would always go to the movies at least once a week. And we were watching a movie with a lot of stars. It was a good movie. George C. Scott was in it, a lot of famous people. And afterwards, my dad said, you know who's going to be a big star? And I said, Timothy Hutton. He kind of already is. He was in the movie. He goes, no. I said, who? And he mentions the name of the actor that nobody had heard of really before.
Because he didn't have a main part in it.
He didn't have he was like a character, second, third lead. And I said, the guy with the crew cut, the pudgy guy with bad teeth? And he goes, he can fix his teeth, he can get a better haircut, he's going to be a huge star. And it was Tom Cruise. And to be able to see that, before anybody else. So, I did that a couple of times. I was able to, there was one, mainly a model that came in, and she just burned a hole in the camera. There was something, she was probably about 18, I guess, but there was some understanding of the world that nobody else had. And I just said afterwards, she didn't get the part for the commercial, but I said, don't worry about that. You're going to be a big deal. Study acting and do movies and TV. And her name was Lori Bagley, and she worked very hard. I hadn't seen her in a couple of years after that because she was in New York and then came out to Hollywood. And she ended up co-starring on a TV series, very successful TV series. She also was in a Woody Allen movie. She did a lot of movies. And somehow you just kind of know. And another trick, and one thing that because we had to, in commercials, match families and do flashbacks. So if somebody's like, in their 80s, you see them in their 30s or 12 or whatever. So I was really good coming from an art background in terms of facial, and figure identification. So I would always see the child in the adult and the adult in the child, and that made a huge difference.
When you set out, how do you get ideas because you have to think holistically about a piece. So how do you get your ideas? And there's so many actors to look at.
I worked with some very innovative directors who changed the course of either advertising or in terms of movies or TV. So most people would go by, you put out a breakdown, this is what we need, and then agents would submit their clients. Sometimes completely wrong, sometimes, that's close. I only used about a third of the submissions. And then another third were people that I thought would be good that the agents didn't even submit. And then another third were, as one director said, I want to see people, he wanted me to cast commercials. I never had at that time. He was the first one, Rick Levine. And he said, I want you to bring in people I've never seen before. They can be from your poker game, from golf, from softball, from stage. So I brought in all these people that didn't have agents, and many of them now stars somehow. They found a way. And it was really interesting to see how many non-actors had qualities that could be elevated or heightened to really compete.
Because you had the eye.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because with the poker players, I set up a poker table, and one guy was an actor, kind of successful, and the other ones weren't. There were some writers and some, other professions, and everybody but the actor got hired. So you never know.
What was your special? What did you do? Because there's some really talented casting directors. What did you do that made the difference to make you as successful as you were and are? And what did you do that was better or different?
That's a great question because I kind of didn't listen. I had free rein not to do what people before had done. So I was young and kind of an innovator, and people, for instance, there was the first mini-series commercial, a Pacific Bell commercial created by Robert Black, who I know you've interviewed before. So there was an old uncle, Uncle Forrest, took place in Oregon, about these two orphaned kids, and he became their father figure. And Uncle Forrest, I had some really great character actors, some people that weren't actors, some stuntmen, some directors came in that I brought in, just to kind of mix. But there's a quality this guy has to have. And they did. So we were having callbacks on Monday. And on Sunday, I'm walking around my house outside, in the neighborhood. And I'm thinking, okay, so we're in good shape. But I wonder if I'm missing anyone. Somebody not submitted, somebody that nobody would think of. Short answer, by the way, to your question is I have good ideas for the most part. But this is an example. So I'm about 1.5 miles from my house on the Sunday afternoon. I'm walking and I go, oh no, I got it. I know who I'm missing. I run full speed back home. I call Robert Black. I said, I've got the guy. He says, don't mess it up. I said, what do you mean? We have the call back. The agency's happy. I'm happy. Don't bring in anyone else that's going to tilt the balance. We're good. We're good. And I said, 2 words. All right, who? Levon Helm, who was the drummer of the band and did some acting like, Coal Miner's Daughter and The Right Stuff. Anyway, Robert went, get off the phone. I'm calling the agency. So the next day, Monday, we're on the phone with Levon Helm, and he says, hell yeah, I'd like to do it. Just get the Money Boys involved. I'm in if they can work that out. And it made all the difference. And he was in 12 of these commercials. And that was really a good idea, to the point where the production company heard about this whole thing. And I worked on so many things after that because of that one good idea. I worked with Barry Levinson for additional casting on Avalon. I worked with, some of the big I did some casting for the first Mission Impossible. So, good ideas.
So what's the difference between casting like a TV series, a movie, or a commercial? They're all a bit different. And do some casting directors specialize in one or the other? And you did all.
All, yeah.
So what are those differences?
I think commercially, you do want to make sure that the director gets someone that they really want, because it's important to a director to have something innovative so that they can advance their career or maintain or whatever. The agency kind of wants people that are safe to be in your home, that are warm and fuzzy or whatever. Or now more on the edgy side, but at that point it wasn't that prominent. So the balance of how to bring in people and or give them pre-direction that, look, don't go edgy, go a little flawed, but don't go to the point where it's like Gary Oldman early on as a killer or something like that, because you're going to be in people's homes for commercials. So even if they're villainous or edgy, it's got to be a safe villainous or edgy, because you're going to be with your family watching this in the middle of whatever show. Television, one thing I noticed is, and here, I still don't know the answer to this, but I have some ideas, but actors say, what do I say when they ask me my age? Because it really is,
Ageist, yeah.
And for the most part, in a movie, it's like a stage direction. The writer is trying to mix it up so not everybody's the same age. So somebody's 50, somebody's 30, somebody's 12, whatever. But on a TV series, it really matters, and here's why. Because Happy Days, for instance, everybody aged at the same pace. Nobody was 16 or 17 years old when they started out. They were a little older, but they all aged, at the same pace. So it didn't look like one person's 40 playing 16 and somebody's 17 playing, But in terms of cinema, if it's a drama, you want to be able to move in closer to really see the emotion, whether it's a close-up or whatever. And faces matter. There are certain stars out there now that, as some, old fuddy-duddy in the 50s or 60s, 1960s would have said, he doesn't have a face. How can we use him? He doesn't have a face. He has no profile. It doesn't matter as much now. But when you have a movie, it's a one and done unless there's a sequel. But a television series, you got to see that person every week for 22 episodes if it's commercial, or if it's streaming, it could be as little as 8 to 12.
So how did this happen? How did you get into this?
I was the artistic director of a theater in a small town, and they ran out of money, and they weren't paying anyone. They weren't able to pay anyone. And as I'm packing up my desk, no car, no money to get a car, stuck in this small town with a lot of back pay, whatever, but it wasn't coming, I get a phone call. And there's this guy named Pat Kehoe, who was the first AD of a movie, that he said, I'm calling everybody, trying to, get some a file of like extras, potential, one-liners here or there, extras. And I said, great, I'll be right there. Now, I didn't have a car, so I took the bus. And I went to the certain city where they were shooting it, and I went into the office, And this is where interesting thought process. Everything turned when I walked into the Holiday Inn, and there was some guy on the phone in the front office hanging up a picture on the wall and saying congratulations. And I looked, some 12-year-old kid I didn't know, never heard of, and I said, excuse me, Pat Keogh? He said, down the hall to the left. Okay, fine. So I go, I talk to Pat, and I give him the file, and that's it. He's ready to go. Thank you for the file, whatever. And I say, who's in the movie? And he says, well, we're still working on the leads, but no one you would know in terms of the character actors. And I said, well, like who? And he goes, Jeffrey Lewis. And I go, yeah. He goes, you know? And I said, yeah, Culpeper Cattle Company. And then he did, and then I go through his whole litany. And he had like one scene in the movie. And he goes, well, how do you know this? And I said, I see movies. And then I asked him something else, and he told me somebody even more obscure at that point starting their career, and I knew all about them. So finally I said, by the way, I think you have the lead. Is the lead a 12-year-old girl? And he goes, you haven't even read the script. How do you know this? I said, well, I think the guy, Jack, I think that's his name. He's like a PR person or something. He was on the phone. He was hanging up, and the picture said Brooke Shields on it. And Pat Keogh gets up, storms out of the room. 5 minutes later, he comes in, sits down, and says, you have a job. You're going to be doing the location casting. You've been here for 37 seconds, and you know more about me. I've been here for 3 weeks. I didn't know who was going to be, whatever. So anyway.
So that's the past, and then now into the future.
Mm-hmm.
How have you adapted to all the new?
Well, the new cannot be looked on in any way other than either it is what it is and it'll change, and change could be good or bad, depends, but you just move forward. And here's how I've been moving forward. In like 2008, after the collapse and everybody was mining the same mountains for investment and everything like that, I've been able to find people now, because you have, the interest rates are starting to drop. More people are starting to come out with potential investors. But I'm going directly to investors right now. So from all over the world. I have some locally, I have some that I talk to and are trying to either get into the movie business or already are. And, one from softball who owns an ad agency, and he invested in a bunch of hit movies. So he's in play on his own volition. So that's one thing. And from that, I'm able to meet a lot of directors and producers who are looking for, that connectivity. And so I'm kind of doing the work to bring that connectivity.
Because Hollywood is always today, tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Your last week's stuff doesn't matter.
No, it's all looking forward, and money helps.
Yeah. So anyway, this is great. I'm with Paul Ventura, artist and casting director. I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television show, and we're out of here for today.